So hi Rebecca, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
So to start, when you are telling a coming of age story as this essentially is, but you're doing it in such like a almost lyrical way, and but because of the setting, for you, what was the biggest challenge as a director of making it both feel that whimsical while like also telling this woman's story of like coming into her own?
I think you just want to capture the complexity of it.
Mhm.
That it's there's so many different layers of feeling and despair and joy, and how beautiful falling in love is, but how painful. So really, just to try and get away from ways it's been done before too. That's a challenge, just because it's not an unfamiliar story. A young woman has an awakening. But I think that the novel is so original, the complexities, the relationships, the psychology. So really, just to kind of follow the psyche of our main character and her coming of age, but also the kind of the amazing, brilliant satellites around her and how they ignite or diffuse her energy.
When I think we also have, whenever it's a parent, there's different dynamics you can always explore because it's either, with moms,
Mm.
there's a controlling nature, and that is partly in play, but it is different because it is at its core a loving relationship, but it is, we see in the trailer, so I can talk about it. It's her mom being like, well, you were never this way, you were never this way. And so she is kind of conditioned to think it's
Mm.
not that way. When you're working with, Emma Mackey and Fiona Shaw and bringing this dynamic to life, how was it getting to figure out where these two characters are in their relationship and how they affect one another throughout the movie?
Well, I think it's fascinating for the three of us to kind of make a kind of past history, and we have to do it individually first because there wasn't a lot of rehearsal time together. So
Mhm.
Emma and Fiona hadn't met before, they were on set. So I think it's building the stories that make you feel authentic to it. Um, and then really leaving it to these amazing human beings, being, Emma and Fiona, to see what their chemistry is like, because they could have played it 100 different ways, but actually there's a subtlety to what they play in their codependency, and that there is love, but underneath there's this kind of vortex of emotion. So all you can do really is talk and talk and talk, and then on the day see where the words and actions lead them, and also trust them with simple things like the geography of where they want to be sitting in relation to each other. How familiar is this talk that they're having? Is it new? Is it a cycle? So all sorts of questions really.
Yeah, and you mentioned, that this is about a young woman going through an awakening and she falls in love. And like I love that Vicky Krieps has now, this is the second time that she's been in a like love story where you're like, what exactly is going on with these two kind of deal. Weird that it happened twice, but I like that it has happened twice in her career. When you're working with those two and their little relationship, how much does their chemistry affect you on the directing and creative side of things in like the back end of it?
Well, it's sort of everything, and I suppose that comes from the casting. I
Mhm.
imagined them both very strongly in these parts, and I think Emma came onto the film last, and I think a strong reason for her to come on was because Fiona would play her mother and Vicky would play her
Mhm.
lover. And on set, they both said that. I mean, they met for the first time, just before they were doing their first shot, and they said, as actors, they kind of fell in love, and so that's what you wish for, and that's what happened. And in scenes that are intimate, we might have had, well, we did have like the briefest of chats beforehand about where it would be and how it would be. And they were very free in shifting it and saying, actually, I think I would be over here and I would wait here, I would do this. And then you just let them kind of interact. And they just kind of flew together. So, as a person on set, not just director, I was just fascinated. I was like, God, these are incredible energies. And they're incredibly generous to each other. There was no thought of um, anything competitive. It's just this beautiful generosity about doing something together. So yeah, just consummate, brilliant artists, all three of them.
And I always like asking this question about adaptation because I think we have very different schools of thought when it comes to adapting something, because some people are like, you have to adapt it exactly as it is in the book. Others are like, you can have a little bit more leeway. But when you're working on something that was a novel and it's a love story and you're trying to figure out how it fits within your vision, what is your approach to adaptation?
I feel responsible and I want to keep to absolutely the spirit of the story. I would never, want to take material and just rip up the book and
Mm,
say, okay, we have the option. Um, but I also have to feel free within the work of it. So normally my first draft will be quite away from the book in some ways, and then I'll go back to the book and put more detail in. But my first draft will be like an impression of, the highlights, the lowlights, and I get events wrong, but it's almost like impressionistic.
mm,
And I go back to the book and put in more detail. But that initial freedom I find quite necessary, just so that it feels that I'm not following somebody else's words, which I am doing, but I
mm.
need to feel like I am feeling them for myself too. So it's delicate, but I've really loved adapting, and the authors who I've adapted have been so incredibly generous and supportive, and so it's not a battle, but it is a challenge. It's beautiful.
One, I really love, I said earlier how the setting is kind of a big part of what makes it feel almost like
Mm,
whimsical at times. But obviously, when you are adapting something, there is already setting and everything is kind of there. But how does it work when you're working through all of that? You're figuring out the setting, you're figuring out where you're going to shoot and the
mm.
look and feel of it. And how does that all play into your process as a creative?
Well, it's seismic. In the book, the action takes place in Almeria, southern Spain. So I went there to kind of hunt out the space, and I was really determined to find out the real beach that it happened on, the real town. Deborah Levy kept it a bit of a secret because she didn't want people to kind of, invade this small town. But I thought I'd worked out where it was and maybe we could film there and all of that. And then as it happened with independent film, finance is always a challenge. And it worked out that it would be cheaper to film in Greece. So
Mm,
all that kind of, research and everything, it was all still amazing. And our production designer, Andrei Ponkratov, went to Almeria and did a lot of research there. But in the end, we went to Greece. And again, we pretended it was Spain, but really, whichever country it was secondary to the fact that what we wanted was not picture postcard. We wanted it to feel quite primal and raw and elemental, and it did to me. Like there was a lot of wind
mm,
and heat, and so throughout the film, in a way, I want things to feel inviting and uncomfortable, so a beach looks amazing but maybe there's trashy radio music on from a cabin, so it's all sort of trying to undercut the beauty of it in a way, but at the same time, the sea and the rocks, they're just like incredible and nobody's ever gonna make them ugly, they just are beautiful, but natural beauty, whereas we put some kind of man-made stuff in like cement factories so that it wasn't always pretty.
hmm. Well, that makes me now have another question I want to ask, because it with Greece, it reminds me a lot of like another coming of age story I really like, which is Call Me by Your Name, and
Mm.
it's set in the Mediterranean as well. And I think it is. What do you as a director think it is about the Mediterranean as a whole that really just like fits with coming of age stories? Because I'm going
Mm.
through my head. I'm like, there's so many that I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, we just threw it in the Mediterranean. And I don't know why we're like, yeah, that's a great place to figure yourself out.
I think it's because one, we feel quite other there. Certainly, British people do, because
Mm,
we're not akin to the heat, we're not akin to the sea, we're not, Mediterranean animals, creatures. But also, there's something quite primal. It's almost like Prospero's Island in The Tempest. Anything that
mm,
sort of feels like island activity. This was actually mainland, but anything by the sea, I think, it sort of takes us back to almost prehistoric times, so I think there is something like ignition there in terms of seeing oneself as an animal in water and on
mm.
land, and to get away from urban. I think that that helps. I also think heat comes into it, you know, that things happen at a different pace and a different temperature. And one reinvents oneself, you know, when you're away. So as soon as you step out of a cafe, you feel different. And so it's all of those elements. Yeah.
Man, I also wanted to ask, like, it's very interesting. Like, and I know it's based on the novel and all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting to me that it is a mother, a daughter, and then the daughter's a woman that she falls in love with. So it is three different women all leading the charge in a movie like this, and that's oddly rare. Normally,
Mm,
it is a girl dealing with her relationship with her father or
yeah.
whatever it may be. How freeing was it for you as a creative to get to write these for three women instead of having to gear one character for a man just because?
Oh, it was wonderful, you know, and I mean, I love writing for women, you know. I mean, with She Said, that was two female protagonists, you know, with Colette, she's at the main of it, and same with Ida. So it's sort of, and Disobedience was two women, you know. So I mean, it's always for me not just beautiful because women are amazing, but also great to kind of redress the balance.
Mm,
Statistically, it's quite depressing how many women are not only featured in films, but how much dialogue they have, you know, because you can say, well, there's lots of women in the film, but actually their agency is usually
mhm.
pretty minimal. So to have a female led troupe was incredible. And really the reason why I wanted to direct it, I just thought it's very rare that you'll get, you know, a trio of incredible actresses together and, you know, spinning around each other. So yeah, it was really, really wonderful. And you know, we had some lovely men on set, our cinematographer, Christopher Blaufelt, our production designer, Andrei Pronkratov. So it's not like an all female thing, but just the Amazonian strength was pretty great.
Well, and for last thing I wanted to ask, as you just pointed out as well, you directed and you wrote it. And is that for you a freeing experience getting complete agency over this story that you wrote from that side of the production of it?
Yes, it was absolutely euphoric, actually. You know, some of the hardest work I've ever done, and a lot of pressure, and a lot of questions, and a bit of self doubt, and all the usual maelstrom of emotion. But I haven't experienced such joy in a
Mm,
long time, just in terms of seeing a film from its first, you know, few words on a page to its the last shot, which we when we shot it, you know, I don't smoke, but I had a little cigarette, you know, and everyone was crying and cheering, and it was kind of like it was like we'd got up a mountain, you know. It was really kind of incredible. And just the atmosphere on set was wonderful. And just to think, oh, yeah, this is what we're making. We're making something together. Because as a
mm,
writer, you know, you give the script and, you know, you have amazing directors make amazing films, but you're not part of it. And I, before this, I've spent maybe 3 days on a set, you know, as a writer, which is not long, you know, in
mm.
15, 20 years of writing, you know. So it was just fantastic. And the collaborative nature of it just blew me away, really. I was so surrounded by amazing artists. So my idea of it, that I would be kind of quite isolated and alone but strong and decisive, actually the reality was, you know, you're making all these decisions with people who have more knowledge about, you know, a design than you do, or, you know, you're talking to actors who have their own input, and it's just this wonderful combination of everyone. But what you do want to do is hold the space and hold it
Mm.
quite safely, especially when there's conflict on, you know, in the scenes or intimacy. You just want to feel like you're holding people, you know, but not controlling. And so that was really wonderful. I loved it.
Well, I can't wait for everyone else to get to see it. And so thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Em. It was really lovely to meet you.
Awesome.
Where
Great.
are you?
I'm sorry.
Where are you?
I'm on a trip in Washington, D.C. Normally I'm in New York, but I'm in a hotel in
I thought
Washington.
I thought it had a hotel vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'm in a hotel on a trip. So I was like, well, this that'll be in the background.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Oh, well, have a
Have a
great
lovely time in Washington.
thank you. Have a good day. Hi, Fiona. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's sunny here, which is so rare. We love it.
Oh, I'm jealous. It's just muggy where I am. But
Oh,
to start, well, I'll start with location then, because I love that this movie was filmed in Greece. I just talked to Rebecca, because for some reason we love putting coming of age stories in the Mediterranean. And so I wanted to ask you, as an actor, what do you think it is about just setting something within the Mediterranean that feels so kind of magical and freeing as individuals?
Well, maybe, particularly if you're English speaking, you tend to
Hmm.
come from Chile Island or Ireland, the Chile Island. Or if
Hmm.
you're American, you always, because so much of the aesthetic comes of furniture, curtain making patterns comes from Italy and France, and Spain. So of course these countries are very individualistic against each other, but they carry a lot of meaning for anybody in the English speaking world, because we either don't have what they've got, or we
Hmm.
have got what we've got, but we've imported it. So I think there is I mean, the Mediterranean is also a very gentle sea, isn't it? And but I mean, there's a lot of heat. I mean, the summer is not the easiest time in the Mediterranean for them.
Hmm. When you get to work closely with Emma Mackey, and I love this relationship because I was saying to Rebecca, I was like, normally in movies like this, it's either like a daughter and her father, or it's like there's
Yeah.
some male figure kind of playing a part, and there's not. It's just a mother and her daughter trying to figure out their relationship. And I think it's really nice to get to see in a movie like this. And how was it working with Emma to figure out where we get to see their relationship when we first start this movie and the journey it kind of goes on?
Well, I knew that our first day of shooting was in the car scene where they have that big row, and
Mm.
that was very hard. And Emma and I knew we had to hit the real heights on that.
Hmm.
So weirdly, we sort of had reverse engineering. We did sort of the last scene first, but we had to. We were on a road at night, and we had to just shoot all night. And I knew it couldn't be low key. We couldn't
Mm.
have a quiet argument. We had to have this rip-roaring argument. And really, that did define the rest of the thing, I think, for us both, maybe structurally. But, I playing Rose just played Rose. It's poor Emma had to play the relationship to the mother. I don't have to play the relationship
Yeah.
to the mother. I enjoyed being like all good narcissists. I was fine. I enjoyed myself. So, I don't think Rose has any intention of hurting her daughter or impeding her daughter or stopping her studies. In fact,
Mm.
she keeps on saying, you must go back to your studies. But I mean, how can you when your mother's saying water and da da da? So, it's one of these classic demanding people who never looks in the mirror to think maybe I'm the problem. But I don't think Rose could afford to think she's a problem. She has no one else. I mean,
Mm.
that daughter cannot go until Rose feels okay, and Rose is never going to feel okay. So it's pretty locked in. It's called like kind of l'enfer c'est les autres, isn't it? It's absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, that's so interesting because I was going to bring up the fact that like she said it's in the trailer, which is why I was like, oh, I can say this. There's a line where she's like, "Oh, you were never this way. You were never like you as a person were not these things." And I was like, "Well, yeah, if you tell someone they're not those things, they're going to think that they're not those things just because that's kind of how like growing up and becoming a person is." And when you get lines like that and you get to see like the things that Rose will say to her daughter and her how she kind of interacts, how much fun is it for you as an actress to kind of like get to have fun with them? Because like you said, she's a narcissist. She's not thinking about like all of these
I
things
don't
that
think
her
she's just
daughter's
an artist.
saying.
She may not be just an artist, but I mean, whenever I took on my mother, she'd always say, "Oh yes, I'm the worst. I'm the worst." You
Yeah.
are the worst. So you could, it's a brilliant way out, get out of jail card. And say, I'm the worst. I know I'm the worst mom in the world. You think, yeah, you are. At this minute, you are. And that is true. But you can never get any satisfaction from a mother. So,
Mm.
I understood the frustrations of the daughter, but we didn't have to collude on them, because in a way, and Rebecca shot it, as you can see, quite strangely.
Mm.
Sometimes I was at a table and I couldn't even see Emma. I mean,
Mm.
you should, we just talking. So very much at all intimacy with people facing the other way. So you're just completely self-absorbed in your own thing. So, it's Emma had the hard time trying to cope with this mother who's blocking her at every turn. But I
Mm.
don't think the mother thinks she's blocking her. She's just worried about her pills or her water or whatever.
Yeah, well, and I said I was like, it's really nice to kind of see, as I said before, a movie like this where it is three women all
Yeah.
kind of on their own journeys and interacting. And how was it, Rebecca said there were men on the set and there were like men who were involved, but like, how was it getting to be part of a company of actors where it is three women kind of telling stories and not necessarily, throwing like having to deal with a man storyline and all women having their own agency in something?
Yeah, I mean, they're women, they're both strong and weak in it because,
Mhm.
Rose could do with a man, actually. She could do with having a man around. I mean, she hasn't done well. She obviously wasn't really good at marriage, obviously. And but she could do with a man. And I think it's very interesting. She starts liking Matty and saying he's going to drive me. She needs a driver
Mhm.
guy. And um it's not feminist in that sense. They're actually the two of
Mhm.
them vulnerable in that little house, the two mother and daughter. That mother, reading The Mill on the Floss all the time and being sorry for Maggie Tulliver. I mean, that is so good because she's caught in a flood, as you know, Maggie Tulliver is, and Maggie Tulliver makes mistakes. It's very clever to have that book in there because Maggie Tulliver is a kind of a failed heroine, a beautiful heroine, but a
Mhm.
failed heroine. Um, and I think, uh, so I, there were many men. I mean, the cinematographer was a man. I mean,
Yeah.
there were lots of men, and the designer was a man. Lots of men. But so I didn't think of it like that. But I loved being with Rebecca. She's a very, very profound. She was very grateful to everyone all the time. She was so nice, as if everybody had given her a present. In fact, she had set the whole thing up, and we were all thrilled to be in her film. But she was always going, thank you for today. Thank you. You don't have to thank us. It's our job." But and Emma, I'm sure I drove Emma mad because I used to make her wheel me around on the set all the time, and she'd go, "Oh." But that was good for both of us. I got wheeled; she had to do the wheeling, so it was quite. I think I was giving her a bit of a. Yeah, she was having a good workout all the time for Emma, trying to
You were
drag me
getting
around.
the lived experience. You were like, you have
Yeah,
to wheel
she
me
got lived
around.
it. So I didn't mind frustrating her at all. She'd be kind of pushing me over stones and getting somebody to help her because often the thing wasn't, I'd get stuck. But I didn't have to worry about any of those things.
Like that was not my
But I
concern.
didn't worry about other things. I worried about the tick in my neck and the pain, and it was not comfortable all day.
But then that's
I
why
just
you
wanted to
deserve
put
to
some of
be.
the pain on here. It wasn't just Emma in pain. I was in pain.
That's why you deserve to be wheeled around. Well, and I wanted to ask, adaptation. You're not no stranger to it. How was it? Like, how was your approach with this story and adaptation, and figuring out like what your character was in this movie versus what it was in the book?
Well, I know Deborah Levi quite well.
Mm,
She's a very, very good writer and very good. So I did read the book, but at a certain point I stopped reading the book because, Rebecca had rewritten, indeed,
mm,
it's like making the mum Irish and making that story of the history of the mum something quite different. But as you're going through the film, and we were mainly apart from this starting day one on the last scene, that was very hard. The fight scene was on day one. But
mm,
apart from that, trying to until Rose blurts out that story, she doesn't know that story. So nobody's lying when the doctor says, do you have any family? She goes, yeah, I had some sister, but she doesn't make the connection that her sister's her mum. Not really, not then. And it's interesting. I've been reading a bit of Jung recently, who does go on to that it's very hard to trick the subconscious into revealing itself.
mhm.
A lot of people say, well, subconsciously I feel. We have no idea what we subconsciously feel. No
It's your
idea.
subconscious.
I mean, that's the point. Yeah. Sub is the point.
Not
Sub
conscious.
or is the dominant dependent in the word. So it's really interesting. I think people are quite, I remember working way before you were probably born. Um, there was the wonderful actor in Ireland, probably the best actor Ireland ever produced. It's
Mm.
called Donald McCann. He died. I did had a gown with him. He later did the Stewart of Christendom. But he said there's no such thing as a lie. I remember him saying that. I said, what do you mean? People do lie. He said no. And what he meant is that things emerge. So when you ask Donald for dinner, you say, will you come to dinner on Friday? He'd say, I might. So good. But you didn't know how he'd feel on Friday. And actually, that's the truth. You don't know. You can't just say,
Mhm.
yes, I'll come and I'm looking forward to it. You may not be.
Mhm.
So I think Rose is quite true. I don't think she's dishonest. But we become, of course, so dishonest to ourselves, I'm sure. But she's not willfully lying, is what I mean, to anyone, including the doctor. But my favorite line is when she says, I want the money back. I didn't pay all this money for a chat. I mean,
That was good. That
we're
was
a
a good
bit
one.
more in tune with, psychology than that.
That was a good one. For a last quick thing, I do want to say it made me slightly emotional. I was seeing everyone throughout this last week in America posting because the first time I talked to you was for Andor, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, and everyone was posting your speech in Andor this last week here, and it made me really excited because I was like, I love that she keeps getting her time. When you do things like, Andor or Harry Potter or Shakespeare, where everyone goes and they know what they're seeing and they're excited about it, but then you get to come to something like this and tell like a real story that is, unique and indie and smaller. What for you is the joy of getting to share that with people who know you from something that might be bigger, but know that they're coming and they're learning something completely different because they're getting to see you in this different story.
I'd be very pleased if Andor fans were going to go and see Hot Milk. I'd be thrilled. Yeah, and of course it's also, I mean, I think Andor, there is no, a metaphor is a thing that has multiple meanings. And I think the superb, very rarely does a writer get a chance to write foretelling something.
Mm,
And very good artists, when you look back at the history of art, it's full of foretelling. There's a
mhm,
one painting of a young boy by Peter Nilly, and he was killed about a week after the painting. Artists sometimes just get it before things happen.
mhm.
And I think Gilmore has really used the empire. To this minute, you could say, which empire we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep. Ooh,
At least one, maybe two, and possibly three.
possibly. Don't matter. Well,
Yeah,
I do hope that Andor fans and all of your fans from your stuff get to
I
come
do hope so too. Leave Andor, get down and watch Hot Milk. That'd be
come
great.
see Hot Milk. I love the movie. It's an honor to talk to you again, and so thank you so much for your time
I
today.
look forward to our next.
Well, thank you. Have a great one.
See you again, Rachel.